And what a great segue. So thanks for setting that up, Tucker. We planned that earlier. But power generation, and Sinch is going to get to it because he's been managing the working group. But we do see a lot of opportunity much in developing countries and places like small island developing states, but also in developed countries where there's opportunity for power gen to grow. We've been saying this for a long time, and it doesn't seem like the segment has reached its potential yet, but we're optimistic that in the future it will. And you've always been banging that drum, Tucker, and thank you for bringing that back to our attention. So with this, I'm going to call on Esther, who I know is in here. I saw her earlier. Esther, where are you? Please come up.
Bom dia, everyone.
Bom
Good
dia.
morning, Michael.
And she's going to give us some words of inspiration to kick off the advocacy session.
I'm going to keep it short because indeed the E in MEM is about engagement this morning. And I just wanted to bring everyone's mind again around the fact that we're talking about the activities that the WLGA did as part of this particular year. And this year was still part of the strategic plan which was themed Solutions for Sustainable Energy Transitions. Solutions being plural, that there are more solutions to many different problems and opportunities that we have across the globe. Sustainable in the sense that it's also about making it last, making it stick from different perspectives, in addition to environmental, but also from a social and empowerment and from a business case perspective. And indeed, transitions also being plural, really acknowledging the different developments and opportunities that we have as an industry in different corners of the world. And I'm very happy to see that in today's update that Michael will be leading, you will see that we've been able since Cape Town really to focus on the fact to be more balanced, as you said, in terms of geographies, but also when it comes to the type of applications that we focus our advocacy on. Secondly, I hope that you will also see that the association has tried to be more bold in its advocacy, in the positions and the proof points and the messaging and in taking the stage. And finally, what I really like in today's update is to show that also that we can do it better together, because you will see it's not just Michael, but it's also the advocacy is very much working together with the likes of Alison and the communications team to leverage that through different channels, as well as with Sinch in terms of the content, the what, and I will bring it back now to Michael to talk about how we've done that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for setting me up like that. Esther, we're going to go through this agenda quickly. The big focus is going to be on the feedback from the President's platform. And then we'll move through the advocacy campaigns for renewable fuels and market applications, and that's what we'll hear about LPG for power generation and end-use applications, and then an update on the Cooking for Life Africa Task Force, which has been very busy this year. So for those of you who don't know, the President's platform is an annual meeting where we get together the President, Tabajara Bertelli now, with presidents and chairs of national and regional associations, and the idea is to get feedback at a granular level for what is happening in markets where we have members, to understand what the trends are, what products and services they need from the World Liquid Gas Association to support them. We divide the world up into these 5 geographies, and we hold, over the course of 2 days, a series of 1-hour calls with the representatives of those associations to get as much feedback as possible so that we can generate action plans, annual action plans that have a positive impact on the challenges that they're facing. And we're going to go through the 5 different regions this morning. And I will stop, I will ask for feedback, and I'll be wandering through the crowd, making sure you guys are awake and alert, and asking individuals to give me feedback. So be prepared, there are microphones in front of you. With Latin America, we had representatives of Colombia, we had representatives of Brazil and Mexico, big markets in the Latin American region, and then the AIGLP, which is the pan-Latin American body representing the industry from Mexico to Tierra del Fuego and including the Caribbean. And the issues that Latin America is focused on are good industry practices. That seems to be a perennial issue in this region, and one we'll be hearing about throughout this week. Regulations, regulations that exist that aren't enforced, or regulations that are skirted in some issues. Geopolitics, so the tariff issue, that's something we're going to be talking about a lot this week, I think, in a number of different contexts. the rise of populism, a populist wave, and what that means for our industry, respecting the brand, so ensuring that the circulation model is adhered to, and then an issue of criminality, which I understand is starting to happen here in Brazil in a big way, and which already exists in Mexico with organized crime coming into the industry. So some of the things we came up with as potential projects for next year are creating a best regulator prize, so trying to engage more with regulatory bodies around the world and get them involved with us. Best practices for dealing with populist governments. Could that be something that would be interesting? And focus areas on things like tariffs, illegal selling of LPG in deregulated markets, and concerns, as I mentioned before, over organized crime. Tabajara, do you want to say anything, given that you're a representative from Latin America, and particularly this issue of organized crime, which I understand is a big issue here? Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. Just to highlight this point, that we are extremely concerned about the criminality in our industry. That's actually not happened now, fortunately, but you can see in other fields like gas station, the organized crime has taken power. Actually, right now, from the last week, our government started a huge operation fighting this mob, the huge organization that trying to launder the money. They use the fuel to launder the money. So we hope we are changing this reality. We hope that we are changing. We see it in other countries, in other regions like Mexico and other countries. They have a similar problem that you need to be united and the help of our organization to fight it. Thank you.
Thanks. Do anyone else in the room have experience with dealing with organized crime in the industry? Is that something that we've seen in other regions? Anyone? Asia? Anyone in Asia? No, it's a Latin American phenomenon. I don't think we have many African colleagues here. Is it something that happens in South Africa, Tamsin?
Thanks, Michael. It happens to a point in South Africa, into Africa as well, but I do understand the local associations, they are working on solutions, particularly with regulators. I'm assuming, Tabajara, it's also to do with the cylinders, the ownership model as well. So I know that the South African Association has been dealing with that. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, it does seem to be quite localized in developing countries. The other issue is ensuring that the circulation or the cylinder recirculation model is respected. I mean, that's a perennial challenge in developing countries and one that we as an industry focus on heavily. Changing our focus to Africa. Again, we don't have many Africans in the room today, but last year we were in Cape Town, and so we had a big focus on these issues. So the deforestation issue, which is massive in many parts of Africa that are facing accelerated deforestation and all the environmental and health impacts that has. The issues of safety, when good industry practices aren't followed. Piracy, cylinder piracy remains a huge issue in many of these countries, and affordability, infrastructure, and health. One of the things with infrastructure we've heard a number of times is the slowness in permitting to get key pieces of infrastructure built. And this was a big challenge for Petrodec when they built their terminal in Richards Bay in South Africa, was trying to get the permits through so they could put in the infrastructure that will help product getting into the country. I should have mentioned that on the call we had representatives of Tanzania, representatives of South Africa, and representatives of Nigeria, so big markets in that geography. Some of the projects that we're thinking about for next year to support them are leveraging the focus on sub-Saharan Africa at the moment from the development community to funnel money into clean cooking. And I know Natasha's in here from Total. Natasha, where are you? I don't see you. I'm here. Total is a big footprint in Africa. And can you maybe say a word or two about Total's efforts in Africa in the future?
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we are present across 17 countries and territories at the moment. And so we are distributing LPG to something like 15 million households, which means around 60 million people. And our ambition is to reach out to 100 million people by 2030 with clean cooking. And for that, the ambition is to invest something like $400 million between now and 2030 to make it.
So, David, what are you doing? Yeah.
It's okay? Yeah?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, big ambitions, and a lot of this came from the IEA, that organization that was mentioned earlier, the summit that they held last year in Paris. I understand that they're going to hold a second summit somewhere in Africa next year, so watch this space. You can see some of the other issues that were addressed, things like pay-as-you-go systems, which were pioneered in East Africa, and which have shown a lot of promise, but maybe haven't grown as quickly as we'd hoped. And then issues like cross-border smuggling, where that exists, is a major challenge. A lot of this comes down to regulatory issues. Asia, quite a large, complicated region, because the Middle East is very different from Japan, which is very different from places like Bangladesh. The flag that you see there is meant to be the pan-Middle Eastern flag. It was the only representation I could find to show what's happening in Asia. On the Asian call, we had representatives of Australia, Bangladesh, India, and Japan. And in Asia, there's a lot of different things happening, things like illegal cargoes of Iranian product coming into Bangladesh, which is causing huge problems in that market. I imagine that it's also happening in other markets. There's a lot of opportunity in places and markets like the Middle East, where you're seeing a lot of reform, in places like Saudi Arabia that are changing their markets and opening up, and that offers opportunity for our industry to grow. And then there's challenges that exist with good industry practices, as there are in many other developing regions. You can see some of the things listed here. Rashid from Oman is very active in the Middle East. Maybe I can ask you to give a word of what's happening in that region.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. 2 point Middle East is a little bit today focused mainly on how to export more, to produce also more, because we are growing. And I think the challenge for us is increasing the regulation also, because there is also underfilling, safety challenges, and so on. And also, I think mainly in Saudi Arabia, it's the willingness to support Africa with this program, Africa. I think it's a lot of investment on it. And from our side, we are trying also to put a GCC regulation, which will help us as to have a common standard. The last standard has been issued in 21, and we are trying to put everybody on the same table. We hope in November to get everybody to set up new rules, new association, and GCC, same understanding. Even people are discussion in an informal way. We want to do it in a more formal way. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So interesting discussions happening in Asia. We are looking at some of these opportunities in terms of putting together an action plan for 2026, how we would support our members in these various different countries. As we go through this, guys, just if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to shout out. Otherwise, I'll continue calling on people. For North America, there we had Canada and the United States represented. There was a discussion about exports, particularly from the west coast of Canada, as they start to export more into Asia, and then increased exports coming from the United States. The development of renewable liquid gas. There was a discussion on tank monitors, particularly in New England, which seems to be a big issue, I guess, in the cold weather there. Power generation did come up, Tucker. I think you probably brought it up. Tariffs, and then advocacy and interactions with the governments, whether that's in Ontario or in Washington, D.C. Does anyone want to comment on this? Steve, you were on the calls. Is there anything you want to say? There's a microphone on your left.
Actually, I was not on the call.
Oh, you weren't? Sorry. My apologies.
It's okay. I had a conflict, unfortunately. But I would say in the United States, at least from my perspective on the advocacy side, we have shifted since we have a new presidential administration, a new Congress. We've shifted from playing a lot of defense to playing a lot of offense. We've been successful in rolling back a lot of really bad regulations for the industry, everything from regulations related to water heaters to mandates for electric-powered bobtails to outdoor products. We are now, in the upcoming months, going to be shifting to EPCA reform. So the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975 has not been reformed in almost 20 years. Congress is likely to take that up. So we are currently strategizing on how we can best protect the interests of LPG in the states through strengthening certain provisions like federal preemption of bad state municipal laws, things of that nature.
Okay, so a lot of work on advocacy. Does anyone else, Tucker? Anything you want to add? No, nothing. That's anyone. Stuart, you got anything you want to say? Well said. All right. Stuart supports what Steve said. All right. Okay. Well, look, this is the areas that we're focusing on in North America. And then finally, Europe. Europe also is a complex place. On the call, we had representatives of Germany, Italy, the European Union, so our friends at Liquid Gas Europe, Poland, and Britain. And here there were issues around heating, which continues to be a perennial issue in Europe. The EU regulations, how they're implemented, where they're implemented. There seems to be a disconnect sometimes between the way they want to implement European regulations and how the national regulatory structures. For the Poles in particular, the war on their border is a huge issue. They've stopped importing product from Russia, and that's causing problems with them in terms of supply. And there you see the import ban, and then on renewable liquid gas, which is a perennial issue for the Europeans. Esther, is there anything you want to add?
Well, we actually have the president of the European Association in our midst.
Hair dryer.
Is on? I hope is this on? Thank you for putting me on the spot here. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Michael, as well. So yeah, I would say that in Europe, it's not an easy world right now when it comes to LPG. Many topics, many things that are discussed elsewhere. We are behind that, and in Europe, it is everything revolves around energy transition. That's one better. I think many conversations in Europe revolve around energy transition, carbon neutrality, decarbonization, sustainability. Our heads get dizzy by all these regulations, by all these abbreviations which we are dealing with every day, looking at George. So we have ETD, ETS2, RED, what else do I have here? EPBD, so it's already a challenge to get that all sorted out properly before you can even act on it. And I think also one challenge we are seeing in Europe is that there are the European directives coming out by the European Union from the famous Brussels bubble. But all these directives, they need to be transposed into local legislation. And there is always some degree of freedom when it comes into the transposition of these regulations into local legislations. So it's not really a very harmonized picture when it comes to energy-related regulation across Europe. So this is a challenge the tiny European Association is dealing with every day. And one trend we are seeing in Europe is, particularly since the war in the Ukraine started, while in the past we were talking a lot about the climate and climate goals and energy transition and so on. Now there is a shift to energy security. So this is becoming a very prominent topic in Europe as well. So I think this is just a little high-level explanation of what's going on in Europe.
You know, I can really confirm that there is I've seen this in the multilateral space where I spend a lot of time, and I was at the Clean Energy Ministerial in Busan in Korea in August, and there was a lot more discussion about energy security than there had been in the past. So I think there's a shift that's taking place at a geopolitical level. It's probably related to the unsettledness of geopolitics at the moment. Okay, and that is all the feedback we had from the various different regions, and some of the plans or some of the efforts that we're thinking about working on for next year. So we'll continue efforts on clean cooking and on renewable liquid gas. That's obvious. Those are two areas where we'll continue focus on applications, things like power generation, marine that you heard about earlier, agriculture, which Cinch is going to drive. Maybe guidance on dealing with populist governments. Does anyone have any feedback on that? Because that came up in a number of different discussions. Populist governments have certain characteristics. We seem to be living through a wave of populism. Is there a way our industry can deal with that? Adrian.
No, okay. So yes, thanks, Michael. So one of the things that we've seen in Latin America, who has been at the brunt of this situation. Oh, by the way, I'm Adrian Calcani from Opus. But it's that it's really is a fight between keeping the price of the product affordable for the consumer, which is it's what the governments want, but also fighting for that price to truly reflect the cost of the distributor to the market. So it's the push and pull between we want more product, we want more distribution, but at the same time we want as cheap as possible. And what we have seen in Latin America in the last 6 years is governments increasingly getting creative and try to get the product as cheap as possible at the cost mostly of the distributor or the market itself. So the problem that we are seeing is that it's a communication problem. We have to go and as an industry and tell them how hard it is to get this product into the hands of the consumer, how costly it is to have distributed those cylinders home to home, and explain that there's a limitation on a product that largely in a lot of part of the region of the world is imported, and it has to be brought from the U.S. or other places. So that cost cannot be changed, and the only thing that really countries can do is to create the incentive so the distribution within country is cheaper, more efficient, and there's some other aspect of the cost of the cylinder really cannot be changed because our world dynamics. So the biggest conversation that we have had is that notion that the price is set up at Mount Belvieu, Texas, and there's really little that people in Sao Paulo, Rio, Santiago can do about that. But once you understand what is the part of that price that you can actually control, you can invest and make that distribution cost lower.
Okay, so it's an education piece, educating government authorities
of how the market operates, and it's not an isolated Brazil LPG market, but Brazil plays in the world with the prices are set by a global standard.
Okay. Any comments on that? Anyone else? Rob, you look like you got something to say. You do.
I thought it was the same face I always have on, but no, I just would echo what Adrian said. The reality is that the U.S. continues to invest in infrastructure, and the Mont Belvieu price, as stated, it's the market, right? And so I think as that supply demand changes, it tends to respond accordingly, but it takes time. I think there's been huge investment on the infrastructure side as well as on the shipping side. And so there's no doubt more and more LPG available coming out of the West. And so in those markets where they might be a little bit myopic, I guess, in their view, what Opus and others are doing to educate and to help them understand the dynamics is super helpful, right? And so I think you also put the Panama Canal into that conversation as well, given especially on the Pacific side, and so we were down in Panama last week with the Canal Authority looking at their project, et cetera. So I think the industry working together to understand the dynamics and to make sure that the end users, where they can, have the best information available is always going to be helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is something we'll continue to monitor, and maybe we can put together a series of guidelines, but it sounds like general advocacy and ensuring that governments understand how the industry works, how the price is set, and where they have an opportunity to make the product more affordable for their markets. The last point I wanted to highlight was the Middle East strategy. So towards the end of the year, we'll put together a WGA Middle East strategy so we can focus on that geography where we really haven't had a lot of focus in the past. And as we said before, there's been a lot of evolution there, and we think there's going to be more opportunity for us to grow those markets or to support those markets in their growth. And that could be an opportunity for everyone in this room, depending on what segment or section of the market that you're in.
Michael.
James.
Before you change that slide, could you go back one? The applications that you want to focus on for next year, I think it's maybe a good point to just reflect on that, because these are the suggestions that we've got. Some of it's coming out of our review, but maybe with the audience here, some people may have some comments on that, some specific issues around any of those, or is there something that we're missing? So I'd like to throw the floor open to everybody here. Power gen, for instance. So Stuart, what are your thoughts about power gen? Let's start over here.
Hello?
Okay, thank you. Stuart Weedi in the United States. For 25 years, we've been talking about power applications from fuel cells to micro combined heating and power units. And there's finally real technology that's coming to the marketplace. Now, we've always had, in fact, I believe 6 different options for 350 kW up to 1.1 gigawatts. Lots of that. But server farms and other things are being built, not just in the United States, but globally. So it's going to consume, it's estimated, these new server farms and AI farms, 93% of the current power generated in the United States. So what about the poor family of 4? Where's their power going to come from? It's a great opportunity for our industry. I hope we continue to evolve here at the World to advocate and look globally for the different pieces of equipment that will work for an individual home or a very small business. I think there's a tremendous opportunity. We can only sell so many water heaters, get so many people to cook, beautiful thing, but if we want to grow the volume associated with the retail marketplace, power generation is very important. One other comment, sorry. This is unpopular. Decarbonization, decarbonization, and decarbonization. It's wonderful, but the problem, if you know what happened, the history behind it, 1972, the South Coast District in California, CO2 is essential to life, to human life. It's essential to plant life. In our advocacy efforts, I think we need to evolve beyond decarbonization and talk about nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide and mercury reductions, particulate matter, all the things that our wonderful fuel does, and get a little bit more diverse away from just decarbonization, because it's going to be proven that the decarbonization is somewhat of a hoax. That's the unpopular part. But it's true if you look at data and facts and real. We're like 0.005% humans of the CO2 emissions. That's the vanity of humanity, as it says in the Old Testament. So I just would encourage us in the power generation applications, the advantages in the reductions of these other greenhouse gas emissions would be important for us to start to communicate and educate people.
Stuart, that was provocative. Yep, Tamsin.
Thanks, Michael. Tamsin from Petrodeck. Sorry, I'm standing up here. So also just echoing on power generation as well, so going back to the discussion that Tucker also raised, it's a great application as well in Africa. So when we're having discussions with governments at the moment, we're speaking about clean cooking, but also because of the lack of energy transmission across Africa, it's also a great add-on to the discussions that we've been having. And there's a huge open door with many African governments at the moment around that. Secondly as well, one of the things we're not maybe linking in here, so when we start talking about clean cooking, there's also an element of workforce training that's required for that energy transition. So it might be something to link into this. So just two items of thought.
Good point. Good point. You know, on power generation, I don't know if there's anyone in here from SK Gas in Korea, but I was in Seoul a few weeks ago, and SK Gas has signed an agreement with Amazon to provide power using LPG for data center. It's a test case, a proof of theory. And that could be a wonderful case study for our industry once they get up and running. And we hope to get more information from them about that, what it'll look like, what the specifics are, and whether or not it can be replicated in other geographies. So watch this space. Any final comments on the Action Plan 2025? Keeping our eye on the clock. No, all right, then moving forward, we'll skip that and we'll go to Cinch, who's going to walk us through the advocacy campaigns and talk about some of the end-use applications.
All right.
Mr. Munson.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so a couple campaigns we did this year. One was the renewables campaign. This campaign was all about awareness of our industry and the progress we're making on renewables, LinkedIn, X, and a thought leadership article. One unfortunate side effect of this campaign is when we put the eye candy there on the lower part of the screen, we got a lot of people that blocked us. I don't understand it. So when we have a discussion, let's talk about how handsome this guy is. But anyway, this campaign was quite successful, as you will see, and with the idea being awareness. There wasn't as much engagement as the other campaign, which was totally based on engagement. And of course, as you set up the campaign, you lean to one or the other, and you'll see that it certainly showed what we expected. Here in this campaign, the eye candy that we used here was much more successful. James really drew a lot of attention. But I think the important thing with this thought leadership piece, and it plays into the conversation we just had, is as we're looking at power generation, this campaign was all about power generation. We used a lot of existing resources we have, a number of case studies showcasing where LPG is providing power around the world. We used a carousel model, which really brought a lot of engagement and people going through, looking at the applications, looking at the installations, and then driving through to the case studies. The thought leadership piece with this kind of tied together everything we do as an industry. It played on the World Bank Mission 300 project. And the idea is that how do we get electricity to 300 million people in Africa? And it made the case, hey, you have to pay attention to LPG, clean cooking, and as you bring that into the country, let's get electricity via LPG power generation to the continent. And let's look at autogas, and let's look at, on down the line, hot water, et cetera. So this campaign was, I think, quite successful just based on comparison to metrics. We don't need to dig into this necessarily, but the budgets for these weren't large, but the impressions that we received, the engagement that we received, and the cost to achieve that engagement were well below social media norms. So which I think is a sign that our industry is well engaged, and also that we have some followers from outside. I think the key to this being successful, and we see this on a lot of our content, is that as an industry, that we promote and work with each other's content, because that drives the algorithm. So as we engage with each other's content, it drives it up and gets more attention throughout. So I think that's the key to all of us being successful in how we use social media. Last piece, Michael mentioned LPG in agriculture. One of my favorite markets, and part of the reason I love the agriculture market is because it's like a microcosm of our entire market. It covers everything we do. Actually, when I came into the industry in 2014, Tucker hired me to be the director of agriculture. And I continue to enjoy this market. There'll be a session on the show floor this week. One of the things we're doing, again, along the lines of how do we create resources that all of our members can use, the slide deck that will be used for this presentation will be available on the member site that has high quality photographs, all of the speaker content, and it will be essentially a deck that is ready for anyone to access and use as you talk about agriculture and why our industry serves that market so well. And because it is, like I say, a microcosm of our entire industry, within that there's pieces on autogas, water heat, power generation, and on down the line. So we'll continue to promote this as well. Any questions on kind of the market and the equipment, to Tucker's point earlier, talking about power gen, but any of this, today, tomorrow in the industry council meeting, there will be a lot of discussion about the equipment and the markets and the work that we're doing within sustainability, growth, and innovation within that goal, as well as what we're doing within advocacy and setting those priorities. So please engage in those discussions.
Cinch, can I just ask, our Brazilian colleagues, Brazil is a huge agricultural country. It's a big part of your GDP, and it's also a big LPG country. I think penetration is 80+%. So is LPG being used for agricultural applications in Brazil? And if not, why not? And what could we do to make that happen? It seems like an opportunity.
Michael, yes, sure. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. The issue in Brazil is about regulatory framework that some applications are not allowed. For example, power generation, engines, and the irrigation pumps. We are working with the authorities to all of these applications. The regulatory is under reforming now, and that's the point. I think if the authorities, all of these applications, we can unlock the potential of the using agribusiness, because LPG reach anywhere in Brazil. That's the best option for agribusiness energy, and it's a clean energy also. In Brazil, it's very common using firewood and the diesel in the agriculture.
What about in other geographies? We have Sri Lankan friends here. In Sri Lanka, is LPG used in agricultural applications, guys? Check. Try it.
Hey, Michael. Not at the moment, but I think the government is actually looking at, multiple different opportunities, not only with agriculture, but especially in power gen as well, in terms of using LPG. But from priority point of view, there is bigger items that's on our priority list of using LPG. So if I were to take like a small diversion, especially when it comes to autogas, as you know, we started autogas in 1995. But there's severe competition when it comes to electric vehicles in the market, right? So even though we lose the battle with autogas versus electric vehicles, we're now looking at how can we use LPG for power gen, because 50% of electricity used still is reliant on diesel and coal, right? So how can we use LPG for power gen, where we might not win the LPG autogas battle, but we win the LPG war, is something we're focusing on. But on LPG for agriculture, the government is exploring it, but nothing as of yet.
Okay. How about Stuart?
Michael, if I could, I think it might be worthwhile, whether it's 10 years or 50 years from now, we're going to feed ourselves with plants and vegetables grown in greenhouses. Yeah. It's very important. I know we need all the irrigation and the flame retardant, but a 30-acre farm growing lettuce grows the same amount of lettuce in a third of the time as a 1,000-acre piece of property. So it's a tremendous opportunity for our industry, and I hope we stay abreast of the technology. We're seeing quite a bit of that evolving in the United States right now. And the rest of the world can adopt some of these technologies, so I'd encourage us to stay abreast of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that point. Anyone else? What about Morocco? Mehdi, is LPG being used in agricultural applications in Morocco?
So hello everyone. Yeah, agriculture and LPG is an intricate part in the LPG market into Morocco. So basically it's something that basically all the farmers use every time. So it's a big market because there is a lot of consumption. Sometimes we do in some farm a truck a day, which is 700 cylinders a day. They use it mainly for irrigation, but what is funny is that my country is actually shifting from LPG to solar power for agriculture, whereas the other one is transitioning into LPGs because our government gives incentive for solar power. And as we are a really drought country, we had a really long period of drought, so agriculture is now down. And we always have sun, so basically they're transitioning to solar power.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you do have a lot of sun in Morocco. Okay. Any other final comments on this point? Tucker, could I ask if WGA could do one thing to support the LPG for power generation, what would you want us to do?
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, listening to the conversation, and I don't think anybody is maybe focused on the one issue. This is going to be extremely difficult, right? And the main reason it's going to be difficult is none of you really do it today. So we talk about clean cooking, we talk about home heating, we might talk about autogas and some, but really this is going to be difficult. So here's the good news. We got the technology, we don't really have the regulations or the regulatory framework for most of your countries, because it's, as I said here, it sounds foolish that, farmers don't have access to LPG because instead they're using more expensive, more environmentally damaging fuels. So the one thing that I noticed, because we've been on this for 2 or 3 years now, is not only do you have to develop the technology and the regulatory infrastructure, you got to develop your own internal sales processes and margin tools. So to your question about power gen, I think it's stay the course and acknowledge that power gen ranges in everything from a one kilowatts residential system to a 2 megawatt industrial utility scale system, and not all systems are to all people, for sure. You just have to have your finger in each one of those pies. But my real thing is stay the course, because this, if the technology was there today, and it's just about, we don't know how to use it yet. We're not good at that yet.
Okay, all right. Take that under advisement. Okay, moving on. Keeping an eye on the clock. I'm going to give an update on what's happening with the Cooking for Life Africa Task Force. There is a meeting on Tuesday, tomorrow, if you're interested in participating at 2:30 p.m. But this task force was formed last year to promote LPG as a cooking fuel in Africa, and you can see the companies that are represented in it. It was set up as part of the run-up to the IEA's Summit on Clean Cooking in Africa, which took place in May last year. And some of the deliverables we've had this year include this LPG, role of LPG in humanitarian settings, which is extremely important and stark. You can see the impact that LPG has in these settings in places like East Africa and in Bangladesh and in the border of Poland. We updated a good industry practices guideline for nascent markets. So new markets, what they need to do to ensure that their markets can grow in a safe and sustainable way, and take grassroots and begin avoiding some of the problems that tend to trip up most developing markets. And a lot of the case studies were taken from places that have been successful. And Brazil is one of those countries that we often cite as an example for developing countries to follow, particularly those in sub-Saharan Africa. One of the successes we had was with the IEA report, which came out in June or in July. And this is a landmark report where they very vocally and very full-throatedly endorsed LPG as a cooking fuel for developing countries, and particularly for sub-Saharan Africa. So we worked with them. We contributed to this document. We peer-reviewed the document. We were involved in putting it together. I highly recommend that you go look at it. It is very lays out in very stark terms that increased access to LPG is going to be necessary for sub-Saharan Africa to reach development goals that have been set for it by the development community. And we're also participating in the Clean Energy Ministerial. I mentioned that I was in Korea last month. Part of that was to go to Busan. We were invited by the United States Department of Energy. The Secretary of the Department of Energy, Chris Wright, is very positive about the role LPG plays as a cooking fuel in developing countries, and they've asked us to participate in this process. The Clean Energy Ministerial is an ongoing discussion between governments that feeds into the G20, the G7, the climate change COP negotiations, and a bunch of other multilateral processes. So we will continue to be involved in this as clean cooking has been put on the agenda and was accepted by the various different governments there. So it's embedded into that process, and the World Liquid Gas Association is going to be the interlocutor, to use the UN language, on LPG for the process going forward. We've held 3 workshops, or we've held 2, and we will hold a 3rd in Zambia next month, 1 in Cameroon and 1 in Nigeria. We were going to hold a workshop in Tanzania earlier this year, but there is an election going on in that country which is quite contested and turning quite ugly. And so we are encouraged by our Tanzanian colleagues to postpone until the first quarter of next year, where we'll hold a workshop. And the whole idea of these workshops is to get stakeholders from the industry, government, regulatory authorities, players in the industry together in a room to talk about what the challenges they face are, and to see if we can't put together a roadmap to help that market unlock its potential. And the Tanzanians in particular are all in trying to grow their market. Their current president, who's up for election, has been very active in trying to promote LPG as a cooking fuel. We had a communications campaign that was run by FTI, the PR agency that we deal with, and it was quite successful. You can see we managed to get an op-ed from James put into the Financial Times, which was quite a coup for us. And we engage with a number of different titles and news outlets that we haven't had engagement with in the past. And we think that this reflects the interest in clean cooking, which has been generated by the push by the IEA. So there seems to be a lot more interest on this issue than there has been in the past, and it's a good issue for our industry. Whether you're involved in selling volumes in developing countries or not, this is a PR victory for our industry when LPG is recognized as a beneficial fuel for people in developing countries to improve their quality of life. And we, this week, are releasing a study on carbon methodologies, and that was done by EnviroFit. We have Nathan here from EnviroFit. They put this together as part of the Cooking for Life Africa task force. And Nathan, maybe you want to say a word on what this says. Just give the group an overview. Should be on. Or not.
Sure. As you mentioned, Nathan Lorenz from EnviroFit. So we focus primarily on clean cooking, largely in Africa. One of the things we've been following over the past few years is the evolving carbon landscape. You know, for years there really weren't options that fully captured the impact of converting people from biomass to cleaner burning LPG from a carbon perspective. That's really changed over the last couple of years. There's now a couple of methodologies available that do a really good job of capturing the real impact. So I'll be speaking more about that tomorrow, but I think we're finally at the point we can really start leveraging carbon to convert people from biomass to LPG.
So finally, after years, there is the opportunity that the carbon financing could become a revenue stream for our industry.
Yes, we've finally reached that point. You know, there's methodology out there. You could start registering a program tomorrow.
Because this has been a long slog, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
It certainly has, yeah. Okay, well, look, watch this space. If you're interested in finding out more, you can come to the Cooking for Life Africa Task Force meeting tomorrow at 2:30, somewhere in the convention center. I can't remember exactly what room it's going to be in. And if not, this document will be released for everybody in WLGA following Liquid Gas Week. Part of our work is also interaction with these various different stakeholders. So we've tried to broaden who we interact with to include some universities, some foundations. The IEA remains one of our big stakeholders that we deal with. So trying to understand which organizations are going to be active in clean cooking, which ones are going to be able to benefit us as partners to promote the use of LPG as a cooking fuel in developing countries and specifically in sub-Saharan Africa. And one thing I wanted to highlight, which doesn't have to do with Cooking for Life Africa, but I thought it was interesting, is we have organized a bilateral meeting between producers in the United States, midstream companies and producers in the United States, and our colleagues in India. When the military action against Iran took place, Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz. And for the our Indian colleagues, this was a stark reminder of how exposed they are if that waterway gets closed, because 90% of the product that they use comes through that waterway. So they are starting to look for other suppliers as a security of supply hedge. And we organized a meeting in Houston earlier this year where we brought together some midstream players from the United States with Indian colleagues who came over for a meeting from the three big Indian companies, Bharat Petroleum, Indian Oil Corporation, and Hindustan Petroleum. We're repeating that here on Wednesday, where we have an Indian delegation meeting with the U.S. delegation, again, to try and bring together these two players and understand if there's potential for cooperation to grow volumes that are coming out of the United States and being sold into India. And this is something that we think we can do more of in the future, facilitating these kind of bilateral meetings and making sure that our members understand the potential that exists. And we see this as part of WLGA's role. Rob, you were in the Houston meeting, weren't you? I keep calling on you, but that's because you got something to say. Well, what do you... It
isn't changing, so you keep asking me to... yeah, the reality is that we know each other well, that is the U.S. and India. But to your point, it's most efficient globally for the Middle East to supply them. When the question of supply security becomes a topic, then they tend to reach out. So this isn't the first time we've engaged, and the engagements will continue. There's definitely some questions to be resolved, mostly on the shipping side, honestly. And so those discussions are continuing to be productive. And their growth continues low single digit, and the U.S. growth continues. So there's a nice symmetry there, though it's not naturally efficient given their proximity to the Middle East, but the pieces will come together over time.
All right, thank you. Do we have any colleagues from India here today? They probably haven't got here yet, but they will be joining us for this lunch which we
Michael,
organized on Wednesday.
I'm
And with that, we are going to wrap up. We have a few minutes. If anyone has any comments or questions, yep, Aurelio, please.
Hello. Just share latest news from Brazil. The Brazilian government is launching a Brazilian clean cooking program. The name of this program is Gas for People, Gas do Povo, Gas for People. In Brazil, there are around 20% of the families are still using firewood. The LPG is accessible everywhere, but is not affordable for vulnerable families. That the government is paying a cylinder gas for these families. We know about this program during the LG week because probably we are discussing in the panels, in the sessions. That's the latest news from Brazil.
Yeah, big program that was launched by President Lula and our friend Sergio from Syndigas. We saw the photos of him a few weeks ago. Any other? Yep, please. Try it again.
Is it on now? It's on. Thank you. My name is Angelique Baird. I'm from Westport Fuel Systems. I briefly want to highlight the little part that I missed in this very nice presentation is Autogas Day on Thursday, 25th. I believe Autogas has a long history, but on the other hand, it has a great opportunity. I just want to inform you that there are still many activities going on in the world. There are several countries where Autogas is not introduced yet. So all technologies there, there are a number of fuel suppliers. And this Thursday, we're going to have a discussion, a panel discussion, where all, I would say, opportunities and challenges are being discussed. And therefore, I invite you also to join that session to give us your views, your potentials, and make it a success. And also, at the same time, worldwide, there are several activities, people involved in Autogas. They are reaching out to their stakeholders. So it's not just an activity here in Rio, but also worldwide. So I hope your countries and your companies and colleagues join the movement. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelique. And actually, I should have, we have to sing for a supper, so I should have highlighted that we'll be holding an innovation summit in Tokyo, in Japan, in March next year, March 11th of next year. We encourage you to attend. This Innovation Summit is an event WGA holds that moves from Japan to North America to Europe on a 3-year cycle. We're going back to Japan next March. If you're interested, please come and see us for more information. And Jordan, in June of next year, we're going to hold a summit in Oceania in Sydney. And we're going to be hosted by our Australian colleagues. Jordan, maybe you want to say a word or two about this.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, so a reasonably fresh announcement that WLGA, Gas Academy and Gas Energy Australia are going to be co-hosting an event in May, June next year, I believe, possibly more like June, hopefully in Sydney. So please keep an eye out for that event to be advertised across the coming months. Looking like, combining a solid expo and conference type opportunity. So look forward to having you there.
Oh.
Thanks, Michael. I'll borrow your microphone because I think it works. I'm plugged in here to the online participants to this meeting. We've got about 20 people online and I'm monitoring questions. We haven't had any questions. But this is just a reminder that you guys out there, if you've got any questions to ask, then please send it through the chat box because we can pick them up and we can handle them here. Thank you. Rashid, you want to say something?
Michael, one question. One question for you. It's how WLG is involved in all this discussion about the tariff, which will impact our business worldwide, supply chain, and so on. And are you involved or not? And at which level?
Thanks, Rashid. Good question. I'm gonna ask James if he wants to field this one.
I don't have that face, Michael, but I have someone next to me who does have that face, who I think might be willing to give some feedback on this. So, Rob, your thoughts first.
Okay, one more time, I guess. Current administration in the U.S. has created unpredictability, and the tariffs have impacted markets globally. We see it, right? We've also been dealing with, I think, the reality of challenged GDPs just globally as well. Petrochemical market probably being at the face of that. How do we think about it? We think the markets continue to work out. There's been other activities, whether it's the Section 301 impacting the maritime in Chinese-built or flagged vessels in the U.S. There's been aspects impacting ethane exports in the U.S. So there's been a lot of things that the U.S. industries continue to work with. In the midst of all of that, at least as it relates to the production side, regulatory benefits have come out of it. And so I think we're seeing that as improved production. But I think the unpredictability is the biggest challenge that we're facing. And it's the same in the U.S., whether you're importing or exporting. And I think collectively, the industry just has to stay connected and communicate. The markets will work, pricing will work. We're seeing good investments still, whether it be on the terminal side, domestically in the U.S. or foreign, and certainly the shipping investments continue very aggressively. As we've talked about ammonia here today, though that's still a developing market, those vessels are available for LPG trade until they do get into an ammonia trade. So all in all, certainly uncertainties and challenges to find the right path to go forward, but I would just encourage, if you have specific questions, the India and U.S. dialogue is an example of just, you have to talk through it and stay communicating. It's a global market, and we all face different challenges, and we continue to work through those. So if you have specific questions, happy to share more in private.
So WLGA will continue its role as a place where the industry can come and have these kind of conversations. And maybe one of the takeaways from this discussion could be us setting up something specifically for this moment to talk about the impact of tariffs and uncertainty. Maybe there's a mechanism we can set up, a platform that we can set up that would do that. I should have mentioned before as well, I mentioned Japan, I mentioned Australia, I forgot to mention Oman. In November, WLGA is holding an LPG expo in Muscat that'll focus on the GCC countries, so the Gulf countries. If you're interested in those markets, let us know. We'll give you more information. It's going to be a wonderful event. Steve, and then we have to close.
Yeah, just on the tariffs issue, at least with respect to the Americans who are sort of driving the tariffs train right now, my association, we have a one-stop shop portal that we've developed and designed and keep updating in real time. So, sorry about that. So with respect to the American tariffs, my association has a dynamic, it's updated almost daily portal for tariffs. So it's a one-stop shop dedicated to tariffs related to LPG from the American point of view. So if anyone has questions on that, please visit our website. I can direct you there. And also the U.S. has just announced just a couple of days ago, we are going to be opening up the USMCA, so U.S.-Mexico-Canada Act, and so we, at least we will be submitting comments on that, at least with respect to the North American countries.
Where's the portal? It's on
npga.org.
npga.org, and then you just find it on the website. Okay, thank you for that. And all right, Daryl, and then this is the last comment, and then we're going to close up.
I'm going to speak loud. S&P Global is covering these markets daily, lots of things. We have hello? Is that better? Yeah. We cover the markets daily. We have a hospitality suite at Expo Mag. Come by and see us. Be more than happy to talk about specific markets, how we saw things on April 4, where we see things today. I'm going to put Rob on the spot. We cover all these things and have a great view as to where things are going to go, what the impact is, particularly on LPG and mainly propane between the U.S. and China. because that's the bellwether in the market mover. So happy to discuss with any of you. Thanks.
And I think this last part of the exchange really shows why the theme of resilience in a changing world is the right theme for this industry going forward. But not without having the balanced scope, as we talked about in terms of geographies as well as applications, whilst also being bold based on the geopolitical changes as well, so that we're able to shift gear if need be, but also to stick with what we care about and what we have the courage for. But most importantly, that we are better as an industry together. And I want to come back to the point on air quality that Stuart also brought up, because traditionally the WLGA over the last couple of years really focused on air quality through the lens of autogas and through the lens of clean cooking. But I do see that, of course, the upside for governments with carbon is that it's international and it's monetizable and you can trade it. So we also need to be realistic about what drives governments. We've been passionate about air quality, but the problem and the challenge with air quality, it's a local issue. But that's where the power of all of you come in. Because I know that, for instance, in Brazil, the Cindy guys, over the years, they've done amazing studies with universities on the impacts of air quality, on doing the math, what it means for healthcare as well. And that's something that all of you, through your associations, can do. And then speak up to WLGA on where you have advocacy gaps. Where do you need more brain power? And that's a shout out to the next industry chair, so to say. We've shifted gear quickly with the jet heating task force, the Just Energy Transition and Heating Task Force, when we had that had decarbonization breathing down our neck, not just in Europe, but spilling over back then also to the US and elsewhere. Why not consider doing something, a task force on air quality, and bring together the good stories that we have, because it is local, but we have the global brain power to move that forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great. Thank you, Esther. Okay, everybody, let's give ourselves a round of applause for sticking it out.